All right, y'all. So last night I picked up at the hospital. I had this patient that was having a little bit of a hard time. So she pretty much was having a hard time getting to sleep. And so I was taking my vitals again at the end of the shift, and I'm zipping and ripping and running around. And so I get to her room, and she looks at me and she was just like, "Did you walk in here about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning?" I was like, "No." She's like, "Was there a sitter? Like, did the nurse come in here?" I was like, no. You don't have a sitter. You don't need one. Your anal time's 4. I was like, so you didn't need one. So then she was just like, so who came in here? I was like, nobody came in here. She's like, I'm not crazy, okay? So listen. I was like, okay. She was like, I was about to go to the bathroom about 4 o'clock in the morning. I said, okay. She was like, there was somebody sitting in the corner of my room. And she was like, and when I was about to get up to go to the bathroom, I heard something in my head say, come with me. I was like, okay. I said, now, this what we not going to do. She's like, what? I said, we not going to go with them. So if they tell you that again, I'm going to need you to say no. Say hell no.
Never accept jewelries from strangers. And after you hear this story, maybe I might convince you. So we're gonna call the person who submitted this story Joelle. This happened to her in Cap Haitien. So Joelle usually goes back and stays in Haiti during the summer. And what ended up happening to her was horrifying, to say the least. So in Cap Haitien, she's shopping at this local market when this old woman stopped her. She had on this head wrap that nearly covered her eyes and like this weird raspy voice. She walked up to Joelle, grabbed her hand and said, "You have a kind heart. Let me give you something." Before Joelle could even respond, the woman slid a delicate gold ring onto her finger. And she said it had a deep red stone, almost like the color of dried blood. Joelle tried to take it off to get a closer look, but the woman whispered, "It chooses you." And then she walked off and just vanished into the crowd, just like that. So Joelle didn't think anything of it, just kept going about her day. That night, Joelle started having vivid dreams of a woman crying underwater. This dream just kept reoccurring, and each night the woman got closer. Her skin was pale, her eyes wide open, her mouth was full of what looked like seaweed, and every time Joelle would wake up gasping for air as if she had been drowning. Then, things got worse. Mirrors around her started to crack when she passed. Her plants that she had in that house withered. The family dog just started acting weird. This dog wouldn't go near Joelle, not even when she had food. Now Joelle says she wouldn't have suspected anything. But the weird thing was, every morning that she woke up, it seemed like that ring on her finger, the innocent little delicate ring, was getting tighter by the day. And it was getting so tight, at some point it looked like her finger started swelling up. So she tried to cut it off. When she tried, she heard a whisper in her ear saying, "You belong to me now." And accepting this little ring went on to cost Joelle so much of her life that seriously, you couldn't even predict what happened next. If you want to hear more about Joelle's hauntings, how she was able to successfully get rid of this ring and whatever energies came with it, you're gonna have to comment part 2. I might actually just drop part 2 on my YouTube channel before I drop it on here. So make sure you're subscribed to my YouTube channel. And follow me on Instagram just so that I know that it's real. And if you're wondering about my hair in these curls, it's Mish Beauty. Okay, I'll see you guys in part 2.
The scary side of New Orleans story time. Jesse and Chris finally saved up enough money to go on their first vacation. Their dream was to go to New Orleans. So they get there. Jesse wants to do some sightseeing. She goes to Bourbon Street, but she also knew New Orleans is known for their graveyards. They have beautiful scenery and historic graves. So she goes to one that has public access. Before Jesse knows it, it's already almost dark. The sun's setting, and it's getting darker. The whole mood is changing. She gets to this real tall monument, and 3 men pop out from behind it. All 3 start smiling at her. One says, "Give me your bag." Another says, "Get on your knees." The third one walked behind her and put her hands behind her back. As the first one is digging through her purse, she sees something moving out the corner of her eye. As the third one is attempting to tie her wrist, an elderly woman comes from behind another gravestone. Jesse said it was like she just appeared out of nowhere. She had long dreads, bracelets covering both her arms, a necklace with a huge emblem. One eye is white, the other eye is solid black. Her dress was made out of burlap. She had burlap wrapped around her feet for shoes. The older lady approaches them smiling. So at first Jessie didn't know if she was with them or not, until the elderly lady said, "Leave her be." The man holding her wrist said, "What are you going to do about it, Grandma?" And the elderly lady looked down and then looked back up, and her eyes had switched colors. The woman said, "Well, let's find out. Run." All three men started running. Jessie said one tripped and slammed his head on a gravestone, split like a watermelon. That scared the other two men so bad that one fell out clutching his chest. The other man kept running. The old woman said, "You have no idea what they were about to do to you. You need to get out of here before dark." Jessie said, "Thank you so much. Is there anything that I can do for you? You just saved my life." The old woman said, "Get out of here. It's almost dark. And there are things out here a lot worse than those three." Jessie grabbed her purse and stood up. She began to turn around and walk away. The old woman said, "What don't you understand? Get out of here now. Run." So Jessie took off running until she got to her car. She got in her vehicle, crunk it up, and while she turned around, she glanced up at the graveyard, and she said she saw over 1,000 different people. Nothing but black and white eyes all throughout the graveyard. So she sped back to her hotel room where her husband was, and she told him all about it. He said that's so crazy, because while he was walking down Bourbon Street, this older man of African descent came up to him. The elderly man said, "Your soulmate is in danger. You need to find her right now." He said, "That's why you have like 50 missed calls from me." Jessie cut her cell phone back on, and there were about 50 missed calls from her husband, and tons of texts of him asking where she was. They done some research and found out New Orleans is known for their protective spirits. Some call them guardian angels, protectors. I want to thank Jessie for sending her story in. I really enjoyed it.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely...
So I had a Ouija board in college and did some really bad things. Didn't say goodbye properly, played in a cemetery, slept with it underneath my bed. It ended up needing my house to get a priest. Here's the story.
Sometimes my plants would move like that and nothing was on, no AC, no window, nothing. Goosebumps. Things would move around my room.
Those videos you saw were because the board was in my room underneath my bed. This led to really bad nightmares, to my room smelling like rotten meat, to doors being slammed, to plants flying everywhere. It was just really bad. It got to the point where I needed an exorcist to the house, and I needed to provide proof for the Vatican. The Vatican. Yeah, that was a good time. Ended up having a brain injury throughout all of that happening. You could check out my channel for that. And then ended up having to be back at my house, and hauntings were still occurring. And then I found out I was pregnant, and I got my house blessed beforehand. But yeah, it was not good at all. My friends would come in, and not even knowing that there was a Ouija board underneath my bed, they would come in and be like, "I don't feel a good vibe in here." Like, some of them would even like be sitting on my bed and they'd see the door slam shut. Or like, I remember one time I had a girlfriend over and my crucifix in my room just fell to the floor. Just like crazy things like that. Got to the point where my girlfriend got possessed when we were playing. Now, we didn't know at the time how bad it was and how dangerous it was. We were younger. Now I'm a mom, so I would never do that. I would never let my kid do that. But I didn't know any better. And so we were playing, and this was like one of those times where we were playing for hours. And one of the girls like suffered from, like depression, and was definitely the most, unfortunately, like the most vulnerable. And that's when demons like to attack her, the most vulnerable one of the group. And started spelling out her name on the board, and started spelling out her neck. Whose neck? We were asking whose neck, and they'd spell out her name, and they kept saying for us to look in the mirror. So they would like type mirror, 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 and it was like really creepy. And then it got to the point where she like could not breathe, and she was literally like couldn't breathe. And the craziest thing about this was that I knew something was wrong. Is I loved those two girls that I was with very much. They were like sisters to me. And when I saw this happening, instead of being like, oh my God, are you okay? The craziest thing happened. Instead, I wanted to slap her. I had anger. I was like, shut up, stop. And I remember saying that and not wanting to say it, but it just coming out of me. It was very weird. But like, I wasn't the one that was like really affected, but she, on the other hand, started really choking and then like got out of it, whatever. And because she was choking or anything, we didn't say goodbye. We stopped. I like moved the board out of the way. I'm like, oh my God, she's choking, right? As anyone would do. And I think that's when it got really bad. And that's when we were like, okay, yeah, we need to get rid of this board, like ASAP. And so we brought it to a park to burn. And mind you, a Ouija board, this one was like the ones from Spirit Halloween, onto the ground. Now, I want to point out that look at that raw crystal, the big one, it's not even moved. I literally put it down the exact spot, and none of the other crystals are moved. They're all in the exact same spot. I was that board, and I covered it in lighter fluid, and it took 2.5 hours to burn. 2.5 hours to burn. Yeah, it was, I get chills. Yeah, it was really not cool. I have a lot more in-depth stories about things that happened to me while the board was underneath my bed, like scary stories that were super creepy, like, and things like that. So let me know if you want more of those. But yeah, that's my Ouija board story.
Today I'm going to tell you the story of a witch named Harriet Boggs. So it's the 1900s and her story takes us back to the small town of Whispering Pines. Now Whispering Pines is a relatively close-knit community, agricultural, small town, and generally speaking, the town looks out for each other. Now one important thing to note about this town is that it sits on a relatively large creek bed. Now, up the creek about 3 miles as the crow flies is a town called Taylor Creek. Now at this point in time, Taylor Creek was still really underdeveloped. It was heavily wooded, lots of wildlife running around, and not a place you'd want to be caught by yourself, especially after dark. But of course, there are always those people who thrive in these environments, and Harriet Boggs was one of those. Because of Harriet's mysterious ways, her desire to live alone, and her relative reclusiveness, there were a lot of rumors that started to come out about her. Some reports claim that the closer you got to Harriet's homestead, the more uneasy you would start to feel, and it would feel as though you were being followed. In fact, there are other reports that claim seeing cats all over the woods staring at them as though they were being watched. Other accounts would claim that as they got closer to Harriet's house, they would start seeing mysterious fireballs on top of the water. Now, of course, this could have just been methane gas. This is a very natural phenomenon, but people said it happened more than it should have, and it was reported being seen quite a bit. In addition to this, these fireballs appeared to move at will, as though warning whoever was coming nearer to stay away from Harriet's house. The closer they got, the bigger it would grow. Again, not sure how true it is, but it is a little weird. Other reports include seeing statues in the woods like the one behind me, or hearing an ever-present humming or singing, although there was no one around for miles. Now, as these events started to get more common, these tales started to flow out of Taylor Creek, where Harriet lived, and into the towns around her. So as these tales started to spread, Harriet became a figure of folklore more than anything. Parents would use her stories to get their children to behave, stay out of the woods, listen, but it also became kind of a good campfire tale to tell as well. That was until the flood, though. Now, this was an unprecedented flood, unpredictable, once-in-a-lifetime event, in fact, a once-in-a-100-year event. But because they couldn't justify anything causing this level of devastation and catastrophe, such as living below the water table, they determined that it was only one thing and one thing only: witchcraft. In fact, it wasn't just any old witchcraft, it was Harriet Boggs. And what made it even worse was the fact that the flood didn't just bring devastation, it brought mosquitoes, and mosquitoes brought their own special gift, and that was yellow fever. And as the town started getting sick, people started dying, and of course that made people even more upset. Then to put the cherry on all of the chaos is the fact that the town's only doctor, Dr. Beauregard Jackson, passed away due to the fever, and this left the village utterly devastated. And of course, because this place was utterly devastated, they had suffered extreme loss, they needed a scapegoat. Now, this is where the story takes a dark turn, because in their grief, the men of the town decided that somebody needed to pay, and that somebody was Harriet Boggs. So they decided that they were going to go and get her and string her up. Now, it would be a courtesy if she even made it to the gallows, but we know that wasn't going to happen. But anyways, the men decided they would pursue Harriet, but there was something that stopped them. And that something was the fact that it was getting dark. Now, according to these men, Harriet had dominion over the dark, and it wouldn't be wise to meet somebody in their element, so they decided they would wait until morning, and then they would go and find Harriet and make her face justice. Now, all that night, the men waited up, anticipating their chance for justice, but they weren't alone. There were howls and cackles outside of the window, cats, weird figures. Everything seemed to be surrounding the town, just a feeling of utter darkness. Now, morning finally came for the men, and as they prepared to go out and exact their revenge, they noticed that there was a black cauldron in the middle of their town square. And as they got closer to it, they noticed there was a note on it that said, "Drink me." Now, of course, nobody wants to drink mysterious liquid from a mysterious cauldron, but desperate times call for desperate measures. So they called every member of the town out, and everybody got a spoonful, and as they were drinking it, they noticed there was a change in the weather. Previously murky and kind of muggy outside, the sky cleared and there was bright sun. So on this very cloudy day, the men called a town meeting, and everyone in the town came out to see what they wanted to talk about. And of course, as they got there, they noticed the cauldron as well. Now, the men instructed them to do one thing, and that was take a drink. So everybody passed the ladle around. Don't worry about any other viruses, just drink the juice. And everybody in the town did so. And miraculously, as they all started to pass the ladle around, the sun started to come. Again, these people had just experienced some massive storms and flooding, so the weather was still pretty bad for them. But like I said, as they started to pass the ladle, the sun came out, things appeared to cool off just a little bit, and you could feel the overall mood in the town just get a little bit lighter. Even better, in a few days, people miraculously started to recover. They gave this juice to everybody in the town who could drink it, and if they couldn't drink it, they would just pour it down their throat. So the nurses at this point were pretty happy. Again, they had even lost their doctor, so things were really starting to look up for this town. Now at this point, because the men were pretty satisfied with what had happened with the cauldron, they decided they wanted to go and thank. Again, the magic that they accused her of using to kill the town's people and cause the flood was now magic they were happy to have around them and magic they were thankful for. And they weren't crazy, and I will say, given the time, this was a pretty decent move on their end to thank her as opposed to... So the men set out to go find Harriet and give her a sincere thank you. But the funny thing is, as they approached where her house was supposed to be, there was a message on an old tree stump that had fallen. And as they approached the note, the men decided it was probably best to go ahead and turn around. And so they did so. And sadly, Harriet never got their thank you. But that's because on the parchment note they found tacked to the stump, it said, "Don't come looking again." And so they never did. But anyways, let me know if you've heard the story of Harriet Boggs before, and if you would have helped the town or let them perish. And if you can name the work that I'm referencing in this video, you get some cool points.
Want to get creeped out? This is the story of someone who did the 11-mile drive ritual. My favorite paranormal podcast did an episode on paranormal games. One of these games was the 11-mile drive ritual. The motivation is a wish. You know, wish upon a star, wish comes true. But this game seemed a lot darker, like you're risking something. It scared me, but I thought maybe this is just a kid's game, meant to freak teenagers out, and something to laugh about later. I'm not so sure what this game is all about now that I've experienced it myself. To explain the feeling you get when you arrive at the 11-mile road, it doesn't feel like a game. It feels as if you're about to make a sacrifice. It feels like a ritual. Now, I'll explain mile by mile what I experienced on the 11-mile drive. Mile 1. It took me about 15 to 20 minutes of feeling absolutely nothing before all of a sudden I had this overwhelming feeling that I was there. At that point, I was at a sharp turn in the middle of the woods, and I knew that when I turned that corner, that was it. The ritual would start. I did not feel a pull forward. I wanted so badly to turn around, but I just went. I just drove. At first, there was no change, but right as I was coming up into the second mile, the temperature seemed to plummet. I checked the paper I wrote the rules on and turned up my heater. Mile 2. I find myself reaching to turn the heater on full blast. It is cold, and that's all. It's just cold. Nothing else seemed to be out of order. Mile 3. I see one person walking along the right side of the road with a backpack. This looked to me like an actual human, though the fact that I was traveling along a desolate back road in the middle of nowhere does strike me as odd. However, this person never looked at my car. He appeared in the rear view mirror and appeared to be playing on his phone. He looked very real and very normal and very unbothered. Besides this, I saw nothing else. Mile 4. This is where got weird for me. I started to really fear the situation for the first time, and as I drove past a small clearing from the trees, I swear I thought I heard a fist hit my window and the sound of someone shouting my name. It was as if it was right outside the window. I have no explanation for this, except for in the case that my imagination was running wild at this point. Either way, I was shaking and involuntarily sped up. I considered turning around, but I just kept driving. Mile 5. Nothing crazy happened during mile 5, actually. It was during mile 5 that I was able to take a breath and calm myself down. Mile 6. Nope. I will never. My headlights shut off a total of 3 times. I slowed down, but did not stop. This road was so curvy, and it was the worst time for my headlights to fuck up. The last time they went off, I actually thought they had burned out. They must have been off for at least a minute straight. I barely saw anything, just the yellow double lines, and I went with that. I almost had to stop when I thought I could see someone standing in the middle of the road, but at the last second, my lights came on, and at that same moment, my radio started blasting an AM channel. This is said to happen, but I don't know if I possibly hit a button on my steering wheel. I forgot I wasn't supposed to turn off the radio, and I turned it off. I wonder if this affected the rest of the trip. Mile 7, nothing happens. I just drive and hear something hit my car, an acorn or something, I assume. Mile 8, nothing happens. But I'm scared at this point, and I have tears in my eyes. The fear is so intense, and I feel as though I am being intently watched. It felt as if someone was right behind my ear, looking at me and waiting for something. I kept waiting to hear someone start screaming. Mile 9. My car stalls. Yep, it happened. The one thing I thought will not happen. Oh baby. I close my eyes as tight as I can, as per instruction of the rules, and I am screaming. I keep trying to start my car, and finally it starts and I take off. I don't know if anything else happened. I just start going, screaming the whole time. I didn't see anything, but I swear I heard laughing at some point. In my memory, I can't pinpoint exactly when it was that I heard the laughing. Mile 10, I'm still freaking out. I'm crying, but I don't see or hear anything. I was pretty much just trying really hard to convince myself this was all just a coincidence and random, and there was actually nothing to be afraid of. Mile 11, I see a red light, but like a literal traffic light. Still, I close my eyes because I'm honestly not sure if this counts. I keep my eyes closed until I can see the red glow behind my eyelids. I stop, and I only stop because I felt like I was supposed to. When I opened my eyes, I felt like I hadn't experienced any fear, like I hadn't heard or seen anything. I felt fine, if not great. It was so strange. I closed my eyes, made my wish, and as it wasn't a physical thing, I immediately turned my phone on and routed myself home. It's been just about 18 hours since, but I'm still waiting to see what happens. So, was it my imagination? Was it all a coincidence? I don't know. Maybe. I'll let you know if my wish comes true. Let me know what you guys thought of that one, and let me know if you want me to look into if he made any updates on this. Anyways, that's it for this one. See you next time.
This photographer had one of the spookiest experiences in Louisiana. He says, "You ever seen something that shouldn't exist?" I am back with another spooky story. So in 2017, Michael, who's a photographer, was working on a documentary about abandoned places in Louisiana. So he'd been driving down this old highway on Baton Rouge when suddenly his GPS just started going crazy. The signal was flickering in between coordinates that just didn't make sense. And then his car just dies, just like that. And he had no service, no way to call for help, so Michael just started walking. And he says that's when he saw the town. Michael says it wasn't on any map and it definitely shouldn't have been there. He said he saw these small wooden houses. The windows were dark and empty, gas lamps that were flickering, even though there were no power line. Michael says that this whole place just felt wrong. Too quiet, like it was something waiting. Then Michael saw them, the people. He said that they were dressed in old-fashioned clothes, the kind that you'd see in history books. He says long dresses, suspenders, top hats, but their faces were blank. No expressions, just blank. He says these people's facial expressions is giving robotic. So Michael then turns to leave. However, the road that he had just taken was gone. It mysteriously disappeared. And this is when someone approached him and says, "You're not supposed to be here." And as he's looking around, he notices this big mansion. It was this mansion that was sitting at the edge of town that looked like it had been rotting for centuries. The windows were boarded up, but Michael says that he could just feel that there was something inside. And whatever it was watching. Michael says he walks closer to the mansion, and that's when he saw it. He says in the second floor window was his reflection. Michael says his reflection, but not quite. It looks like him, but the eyes were black and his teeth were too sharp, and it was smiling. When suddenly Michael hears a voice saying, "He's waiting for you." I know you guys hate part 2s, but I'm gonna have to because I have to get to work. If you have a spooky story that you want me to tell, feel free to submit it to me on Instagram or TikTok. And before I go, can I just take a brief moment for the lips? Can we admire for a little bit? Oh, this is what I use to line my lips. And you get a variety of different colors too. I was using like the darkest one that they have, like the darkest brown. And as you can see, and for every video, I'm gonna try a new lip liner. I'm gonna just link these in the video just in case you want it. You could just click it and put it in your cart, girl. Anyway, like I said, every single video, I love you, my abducted humans, from your favorite Haitian homegirl.
Put your finger down if you went to get a haircut last year and instead maybe you got a voodoo curse put on you. I recorded this video so many times a year ago, and I had drafts that I don't have anymore, but I never posted it because I was genuinely terrified because of the just stupid crazy shit that happened, that I was like, if I talk about it, will they come after me? I don't know, but I'm gonna talk about it now because it's been a year and I just remembered that the drafts are gone, and I want people to know. But I won't say where it is unless you guys tell me that I should. But my parents told me at the time that like they could sue me for defamation if I say what happened. So please advise me. So what happened is I've only ever had my hair cut by my mom in my kitchen, and I wanted to get a real haircut because my mom hasn't been a practicing cosmetologist in over like 2 decades. And so my friend sent me this business TikTok and was like, here's an all-inclusive place that seems really friendly and cool for a first haircut. And I was like, awesome, this place looks great. And they're very well known on TikTok and made fun of for certain thing that they do about their all-inclusiveness, okay? They cater specifically to the queer community. And I went, and it was great. Like my first appointment was great. I was like, oh my gosh, wow, this is really cool. This is really cool. And then I get home and I look at it because when the haircut was finished, they just had me pay and leave. I like didn't really get a chance to like put my fingers through it and see if it was right. And there were some things that were wrong about it. And so I messaged them and I was like, hey, can we get a touch up? And they were like, sure. And I go in and they spend like the entire time being like, I actually did this right. Like you're wrong, but we'll alter it for you, which was fine, I guess. But when I went back, the normal eclectic stuff that they had before, like all the picture frames and stuff up on the wall, was still there, but they had added some Halloween decorations. And when I asked them, hey, did you decorate for Halloween 5 months early? Because it was almost like a year ago today. It was like June 10th, July 10th, I think. And they were like, no. That's all we talked about it. But when I walked in the room, there was a giant sign that says, abandon hope, all ye who enter. And there was a ring of salt around my chair, and there was salt in front of the mirror in front of me and on the countertop in front of me. And there was a mirror behind me that had a giant pentagram covering the entirety of it. There was a pentagram on the floor in front of me, 3 pentagrams in the corner of the mirror in front of me. And next to that line of salt on the countertop was some candles and voodoo doll looking things. There's also a skeleton. I think the skeleton may have been there during the first appointment. I think that might have just been part of their decor, but it ties in, so I really don't know. But so like the vibe when I walked into the fix appointment was just hate. It was just hate, and I felt so uncomfortable. And then halfway through the appointment, they left to go to the bathroom. Now, in the first appointment, they left to go to the bathroom as soon as I got there, which I thought was odd that they hadn't gone already, but, you know, I don't care, you do your thing. But the second appointment was 10 minutes long. So I don't know why they had to leave halfway through, except for the fact that when they left, the music switched from being like pop music or elevator music to the kind of music you would hear in a haunted house where it's like whisper chanting in a different language. Yeah, and then it went back to normal as soon as they came back in the room. And they were cutting my hair really quickly the whole time, and so quickly they snagged the scissors on my hair for a second and like pulled my hair really hard. And then when they finished, they literally go, all right, you're done, you gotta go, I've got a client coming, and like walk me out the door and close it behind me. And I essentially immediately start bawling, and I call my friend and I'm like, what the fuck? And I call my dad and I'm like, I'm coming home, like I'm sorry it's taking so long, but I need to have a breakdown first. And it's weird because I didn't think that they weren't threatening me with like scissors or something like that, but they are holding scissors next to my face, and there's all this threatening stuff around and the threatening music, and I just felt very uncomfortable and unsafe the entire time that I was there for that second appointment. And I wanted to post a review somewhere about it and be like, hey, this place is not chill, but my parents told me that they could sue me for defamation, so I have not said anything about it, because if they are gonna put a voodoo hex on me or something, who's gonna stop them from doing normal crazy stuff? And I don't really believe in like hexes or anything like that, but that's not the point though. That's not the point. The point is that their intention is bad, and that scares me. So if you guys want to know where it was, or if you have any guesses on where it was, let me know. But yeah. Also, if you want to see the haircut, the haircut is not like the end of the world, but it was not at all what I was going for. And I was more crying because I was freaked the fuck out than that the haircut was terrible, which it was bad. It was very uneven and very... Anyway, let me know what you think.
So today we're going to be diving into some more scary content, and we're going to be talking about 1999, the creepypasta. I first read this creepypasta when I was probably a freshman in high school, and it really stuck with me. I don't know what about it is so freaky, but I finally found it again today, and I'm going to share it and read it with you guys. Just a disclaimer, this is not my story. I did not write this. This is from creepypasta on the internet. I'm just going to be sharing it. So let's dive into part 1. The year is 1999. That sentence brings me back to my senior kindergarten class when I was 5 years old, where we used to read out the date on the blackboard every single day. The year 1999 exists as a stain in my mind, however, as a memory that will not go away no matter how I try to forget it. 1999 marked the year I lost my first tooth, my first time on a plane, and unfortunately, the early loss of my childhood innocence. That one memory that refuses to be wiped. It all started with that new, or old, TV. At that time, Pokemon was the latest fad to hit the school. Pokemon cards, games, stickers, and the most popular, the TV show. So, of course, every time I came home from school, I would stay glued to the TV until Pokemon came on at 5. The only problem was that my dad watched the news at 5:30, and Pokemon episodes were back to back, which meant I had to miss an episode every day. Something I whined on and on about. My dad got tired of hearing me complain every day, and that must be why he went and bought another TV. My dad put the TV he bought in my room. Unfortunately, it was just an old small boob tube with rabbit ears even. It also only had 20 channels available, not including the channel Pokemon was on. I recall I didn't care though. I was just thrilled I had my own TV in my room. After surfing through the channels, I came to the conclusion that only channel 2, TVO Kids, was worth watching, so I watched that for a while. It wasn't for another few months until I discovered channel 21. One day in April, I was flipping through the channels trying to see if Pokemon was on. I pressed channel 21 into the remote, hoping there were more channels, and to my delight, there was. My dad was surprised too, but he let me watch it because it seemed to have a kids program on. The channel was called Calden Local 21, and later I found out it was indeed broadcasted from the very town of Calden, Ontario, a town very close to my own city. The shows I saw on Calden Local 21 looked poorly made, and I never understood what was going on in them half the time. However, as I grew up, every time I thought of that channel, I realized more and more how messed up the shows were, and I had to ask myself, what the fuck was I watching? The following is a list of shows and episodes I remember seeing on Calden Local 21. How I remember such detail even disturbs me, but I guess things like this stand out in your mind for a while. The channel only ran a few shows, probably because it was only operational between 4 p.m. and 9 p.m. And that is the first part of 1999.
Still to this day, I believe that my husband was voodoo when we was in New Orleans. So me and him went to New Orleans a few years back, and we was on Bourbon Street, and an incident occurred. But before I tell y'all incident, let me just tell y'all what was going on throughout that night. So as we was walking, we saw a lot of things, women topless, it was just things that people say that goes on in New Orleans, but then you get to experience it for yourself. So that particular night, we were out there drinking, and when I tell y'all, I have never been so intoxicated like that night. Well, I'll take that back because I have been pretty intoxicated before. But so this woman comes up to my husband, well, my boyfriend at the time, and she was forcing the drinks. Like, they'll come and make you open your mouth and like just chug the drinks with their mouth. And I was just like, oh my goodness, I see and hear about this all the time. And then after that, she demanded like $40. She was like, $40. And my husband was like, first of all, you shoved that drink down my throat, blah, blah, blah. So we're not going to go into all that. But this is the scary part. Well, I won't say scary, but this is where it gets evil, okay? And you know, they say all different type of things about New Orleans. They say that it's deeply racial into witchcraft, voodoo, hoodooism, all those type of things. She was like, you stay out of it. She said, I want your man. I want him. And she was pointing at him, and I was just like, look, let me just pay for it. This will just all be gone away, okay? Well, my husband was still upset at that time, so he was just like, no. So when we was walking away, my husband turned around and looked at the woman, because the woman was like, kind of had this hideous laugh, but she was still angry, like, and mad. And he was like, she just did something like this. Like, it was like 2 fingers, and it was like this. And she was just like looking at him, shaking her head. Now, I'm not sure what could have happened. I'm really not sure what, is that a spell or what? But I promise you, at 3 o'clock that morning, he was throwing up sick, and he stopped throwing up 7 days later. He was throwing up the whole way home back to Mississippi, and he was not able to keep nothing down. He was just throwing up repeatedly. I took him to different hospitals. They was just like, nothing is wrong. And they will give him IV drips, and he'll be okay with the fluid. But soon as they took the IV out, he was just back. Blah, blah. I'm talking about, he was just throwing up so much. Make a long story short, it was literally 7 days after he finished throwing up. So y'all tell me, what do y'all think about that New Orleans story?
Spooky story time. So I've been seeing a bunch of other creators come on here and talk about their experience whenever they visit New Orleans, and particularly the French Quarter. And as someone who used to live down there for quite a few years, I thought that I should share what happened to me. So for context, I've lived a little bit of everywhere. I am from North Carolina. I currently live in Lafayette, Louisiana now, but for quite a few years, I lived in either New Orleans, Metairie, Kenner, those areas. And back when I had first moved to New Orleans, like so many others, I used to go to Bourbon Street to go party. Now, this particular time wasn't my first time ever going on Bourbon Street. I have been on Bourbon Street so many times before, but this one particular time was way different. So I remember it being probably like 1 a.m. And if you know the culture of New Orleans, if you know the culture of just the French Quarter, bourbon, that is very, very early in the evening. And I remember it plain as day. It was around 1 a.m. and I was out with some friends, and we were on crowded ass fucking Bourbon Street, and I had to pee. I was not drunk. Okay. Again, it was 1 a.m. This is still pretty much like, people, like, the culture down there is just so different. The clubs and the bars, they stay open so late that people don't even leave their house until 1 o'clock in the morning, okay? So I was not drunk. I was not even fucking tipsy. And I was out with my friends, and we were on Bourbon Street. I remember being on the corner of Bourbon and St. Louis, and I had to pee so fucking bad. If you've ever been down there, you know how crowded Bourbon Street gets. You know that the lines to the bathrooms are like super long. So I tell my friend, I'm like, hey, we're in the corner of Bourbon and St. Louis. And I tell my friend, I said, hey, I'm going to go to the bathroom. We're on this corner and I look down St. Louis. We're on literally on the corner and I see a bar on St. Louis. So automatically I'm judging the situation. I really have to fucking pee. And ladies, y'all know how it is when you have to pee so bad that it fucking hurts. I don't want to fucking pee on myself. I'm not about to walk through the crowd of Bourbon Street to then have to try to get into a bar and potentially have to stand in line on the bar. I'm like, I see another bar on St. Louis. There's few people there. You know, like on St. Louis, it's crowded, but it's definitely not as crowded as Bourbon. So I'm just going to go right there. So I tell my friend, I say, hey, I'm going to go to the bathroom. Are y'all going to be right here? She's like, oh, well, we might go back into wherever. And I'm like, okay, fine. I'll go find you. I'm just going to go to this bar right here. I'm going to go to the bathroom really fast. She's like, all right, cool. So boom, I go. Now, if y'all want to pull up Bourbon in St. Louis on your GPS, literally where I was, it was less than a minute of walking time until I would have ran into this bar. So I start walking. I look down. I'm about to pull out my ID because I have to get into the bar. And I remember walking and I get out my ID. And when I look up, because I'm like, I should be at the bar by now. The same fucking bar was now way down the street. And I see Dauphine. Okay. Now, again, look it up on your GPS, but there's no fucking way from the time that I was walking. I literally was not even walking for a full minute. And the bar that I saw had now moved way down the fucking street. Not only that, where all the people that was on St. Louis, the street was quiet. The street was dead. All of the people that I had just seen are all of a sudden gone. I turn around behind me and I can still see Bourbon Street, but it is way off in the distance. It was like I had been walking for like 10 minutes or something. And I could see Bourbon Street, but it's way off in the distance to the point where the sounds of Bourbon Street sounded muffled. They sounded far away. And all of a sudden there was no one on St. Louis, the street that I was walking down. It was like time and space, like, did it make sense? And so I'm just like, what the fuck? I still have to pee. And like, I just want y'all to understand that, like, no, I wasn't tripping. No, I wasn't drunk. And no, I wouldn't have fucking picked a bar that far away to walk to when I felt like I was about to pee on myself, okay? Somehow this bar had moved. Somehow I am now way down the fucking street from Bourbon Street from where I was. And I just remember this chill coming across me. Not necessarily, it wasn't like I was cold, but it was like this chill of like, you in danger, girl. Like my spidey senses was tingling, and honestly, it had to be my ancestors or something just like watching over me, protecting me, because I just had this thought and this feeling of like, turn your ass around and run. And so that's exactly what I did. I turned my light skin ass around and I ran back to Bourbon Street. And what's so crazy is that I told you Bourbon Street was now in the fucking distance to where I couldn't even hear the noises. When I decided to go back, I was back on Bourbon Street like that. Like I ran a little bit and I'm back. To this day, I cannot explain what happened. Whenever I tell people about it, especially like people who are local to New Orleans, they all say the same thing. Like, oh yeah, like you shouldn't even be in the French Quarter that late at night. They got some shit out there. And I'm not saying any of this to like discourage anybody from like visiting New Orleans. New Orleans is a beautiful place full of rich culture, full of history, Black history, Spanish history, French history, and also fucking supernatural history, okay? There is a reason why all of these like supernatural shows are set in New Orleans, because that shit is real. So I don't know if it was a portal or a vortex, but I was not about to stick around long enough to find out. So again, not trying to discourage you from visiting. I am trying to encourage you that if you're going to be in the French Quarter, don't be walking alone. Make sure you're with somebody, because apparently it's easy for you to get lost.
Hello, TikTok. Fagger Freestyle here with another story time about the time I met a vampire. I tried to do this story the other day on live and it just did not work out. But anyway, I just decided to record a video. People have been asking me about the story, so here it goes. I'm a rideshare driver in New Orleans. So, of course, I encounter all types of people from all walks of life. So one particular ride was very interesting. Now, this was a couple of years ago when this occurred. And I'm going to tell you, for the most part, I remember what she said. I do not remember what she looked like. And there are some details that when the experience was over, like I had completely forgotten some things. But anyway, so I'm riding, pick up this passenger, and I remember our conversation. And the craziest thing is I can remember her voice. I can, and even as I'm telling you this, I can hear her voice in my head. And I can even picture like this part of her face around her mouth, her lips. I can see them moving as she's talking to me. And I remember her hand being on my shoulder, and I remember what it felt like when she touched me. But a lot of other stuff, it's like was just completely erased. So I pick her up, and I do know that we were having conversation. I talked to many of my passengers, and she is telling me I have really great energy. So I told her thank you. She asked me some things about myself, nothing too private, nothing with too many details. So, I just kind of gave her some general info. And I remember her telling me that she wasn't from here. That I do remember. And then she proceeds to tell me how much she loved New Orleans, how much she loved being there, living there, et cetera, et cetera. I do recall asking her where she was from originally, and all she told me was that she was from very far away. And it's funny again because I'm hearing her voice in my head as this is weird. And I've never shared this story with anybody, so TikTok, you're getting it first. She touched my shoulder at one point, and this is where things got really strange. She touched my shoulder, and I felt like I just froze. And even as I'm talking to you right now, I can distinctly remember that feeling of feeling frozen. And my hands were on the wheel because I could see my hands on the wheel. The car wasn't moving. And being frozen in that moment, I hear her voice, but not like I'm here talking to you. In my head, I hear her voice telling me, don't be scared, that she's not going to harm me. And then after that, we're moving again. And I remember kind of turning and looking like that. And she was sitting back in the seat and her hands were on her lap. And I said, what did you do to me? And she just smiled. And she says, I just leached some of your energy. And I said, what? She said, I just leached some of your energy. She said, this is going to sound crazy, but I can assure you it's true. I'm a vampire. She said, but I'm not the type of vampire that you've been taught about in books and movies. She said, those types of vampires exist, but they're very rare these days. I'm a vampire that feeds off of energy. And all I have to do is touch you to get it. She said, New Orleans is a great place for her and her kind to exist. And that there are quite a few members of their tribe, is what she called them. I think I remember this part of our conversation so significantly because I believe when she touched me, she implanted something in my mind, whether you want to call it a memory or a thought or an idea. But she gave me something of herself, probably, to where I can recall this portion of the interaction between us. Maybe she knew that eventually I would share the story with others and therefore maybe make it a little bit more acceptable for them to start, for her and her members to start presenting themselves. I don't know. I don't know why she even chose me for this. But she told me that there are vampires that survive off of good energy. There are vampires that survive off of bad energy. There are vampires that survive off of sexual energy. And there are vampires that survive off of blood. And New Orleans is the only place in the world where you can find members of all four of those vampire tribes. Maybe she wanted me to remember this portion of it as a warning. I don't know. But I know she wasn't lying just because of how I felt. And even now, it's crazy because I still feel like her hand is on my shoulder, which makes me wonder, when she touched me, did she create some type of psychic connection between the two of us? I don't know, but I think I need to end this. Anyway, I don't remember where I dropped her off at. I don't even remember dropping her off. The next thing I remember doing clearly was being in a part of town that I didn't remember how I even got there. And it was like 2 hours later. And I was just in a parking lot. Just in a parking lot. And I know it sounds weird, y'all. I think I probably shouldn't even recorded this. I probably shouldn't even be talking. I probably should not even be talking about this. I shouldn't.
There's not a day go by that I don't have some type of encounter with a ghost, spirit, whatever you want to call it. So here go today's episode of me having an encounter with a ghost. I goes to a patient room to bring back their belongings because they just got out of surgery. As I go in the room, the man kind of sleeps, so I'm like, hey, look, I need you to sign this form so I can get your belongings back, and it just verify that you got your stuff back from our department. So as I'm walking out the room, the water in the zinc turned on, hard down, faucet running, water just running. I'm like, okay, I guess it's my encounter for the day. As I'm walking out, water stopped. Nobody touched the water just started running on its own.
Stop asking me, do we got vampires here? Bitch, we got mosquitoes here that'll pull your motherfucking sock down and bite your ankles. Them hoes will pull your lace front back and bite the glue off your head. Yeah, we vampires, bitch, mosquito.
Someone wanted to share this unfortunate experience they had at a New Orleans cemetery. I am back with another spooky story. We'll call the person who submitted this story Laura. Now, Laura has always been into the dark and mysterious stuff. As she says, she has a gothic aesthetic. She loves skulls, skeletons, blood, gory things, and scary movies. She's always been open to something paranormal happening to her, but despite her aesthetic, she'd never actually gone through anything. But she said, fast forward a few years ago, she said she was seeing this guy who had this idea. Now, she said that this is something that she's always thought about doing, that she's always wanted to do, but she didn't know anybody else who would be into that. So she never brought it up. But she's seeing this guy and he brings up this idea to her. And the idea being to get intimate in the cemetery. Okay, I'm not one to kink shame. So she says, so they made it like a whole thing. They were gonna have a picnic in the cemetery after hours. And then, I'm sorry guys, I'm trying because, what the fuck? They were having a vampire themed night. So they bought cups, plates, red blankets, candles, and drinks and food that resembles, like blood and body parts. That's a cute gothic date, I feel. So they link up, they get to the cemetery, and they lay their stuff out. We're in this open area, there were graves around them, and they start their dinner. Now, she said from the moment she walked into the cemetery, she could feel the energy difference, as the energy in the cemetery felt so thick and damn near suffocating. There was this immense feeling that they were being watched, as they would hear footsteps behind them, but when they would turn around, there would be nothing there. They would hear weird animals, sounds that they've never heard before. However, this seemed to be feeding into their aesthetic. Although it was a bit unsettling, her and her boyfriend were there for each other. So dinner happens, and then eventually the bada boom bada bing, thank you ma'am. She said when they first got into it, without too many details, it got really cold. But temperatures changes, so they keep going. And while they're doing it, dude behind her starts hyperventilating, like he can't breathe. The air has become so thick around him that they have to stop. So boom, he stops to catch his breath. At this point, the energy just starts to intensify. So now they're really hearing animals rushing towards them. Now at this point, they're hearing voices, as if someone is running past them and whispering something, but they can't quite make out what the fuck is being said. In that moment, they decided that was enough thrill for the night. It's time to go home. So they pack up their stuff and they head towards the exit. One small problem though. They couldn't find the exit. Laura says now she knew exactly where she came in from in this cemetery. And the car that they drove to the cemetery in is not too far, so where's the exit? Laura said they walked back towards the direction that they thought they came in from, and there was no exit. So they walk all the way back, no exit. They're literally looking up and down. Now they're walking cute distances, no exit. So they're like, you know what, it's dark outside. Maybe the red wine has really gotten to them. So they decided to press the car because they weren't parked far from the cemetery, so they should hear the car beep. So they press the key and they hear the car right outside beeping. So they're like, okay, we're close. They're trying to walk towards the sound of the car, and it doesn't sound like they're getting any closer. Laura says at this point, they start freaking out. They were stuck in the cemetery while being haunted by God knows what. When they went to try to call for help, their phones would not work, and they had no idea how long they were stuck in there for, but they knew it felt like forever. When finally, from a distance, her boyfriend sees somebody and he's flagging this man down, and this man walks up to them and says, what are you guys doing here? You shouldn't be in here at this time. And they express to him that they got lost and that they just need to find their way out. And the guy says, what do you mean? The exit is right there. And they looked over, and evidently, the exit was right there. Laura said they made a run for that exit, fearing that it might just disappear again. They got out, they looked behind them, thinking the guy is probably looking at them crazy, and when they looked back, there was no one in there. They had enough spooks for the night. They decided that was enough. They got in the car, went home, and didn't think about it. If you want to hear about the nightmares that she and her boyfriend would have after the fact, that's another story time for another day. Thank you guys so much for tuning in and watching this spooky story. If you have any spooky stories that you would like me to tell, feel free to DM me on Instagram or message me right here on TikTok. And if you're not already, be sure to follow me on Instagram. I mean, just so that I know that it's real. Duh. And of course, subscribe to my YouTube channel. I love you, my abducted humans, from your favorite Haitian homegirl.
I decided I'm going to tell the story about the house that we used to live in. As a Christian, you're taught you're not supposed to believe in spirits. I do believe in spirits. I've personally seen them myself. We moved into the home in 2013. It was my husband, myself, and at the time we had 4 children. I had not had our 5th yet. And we were just starting to move in, so we were painting and getting everything together. My husband left me at the house by myself to paint, and it was in the daytime. It wasn't anything scary. It was a 2-story house. I'm gonna put a picture of it here. Neighborhood is another story that it all intertwines into all of this. If you're from Louisiana, in the area that we live in, folklore that goes with living here, I don't know anything about the land. The house was not a brand new house, but it wasn't old. And I was upstairs painting, and I was by myself in the house. Then all of a sudden, I hear the water turn on in the bathroom. That was my first, the knob was already on and they just turned the water on. I didn't think too much into it. It did give me an eerie feeling, but I blew it off because it wasn't that big of a deal. About, I want to say time goes by, little things happen all the time. We hear things all the time, things will open and close, things will turn on and off. It was just kind of just brushed away, it wasn't a big deal because we were just okay, whatever. Our dogs would bark up the stairs at nothing all the time. So my daughter is born. Things start kind of picking up around the house where things start happening. My son starts sleepwalking more. There's I would wake up, he would be sitting at the foot of my bed. Every time people would come over, they would say they felt really strange in the house. When my daughter was about 1.5, this is when things really took off, and I don't know why. And I'm gonna give you the backstory of the neighborhood and all the incidents that happened there too as well, because I think it just all ties into it. So my daughter we're home together. Everyone is at school because the kids are older. My husband is at work. So my daughter and I are sitting on the floor in the living room, and she looks behind me and she goes, hi, hi, ha. Talking to whoever it is behind me. I picked her up. I was like, let's go outside. I went and sat outside. I was so freaked out. So I'm telling my husband, I'm like, something is wrong with this house. I don't know what it is. It's never felt comfortable. It's always felt heavy. There's something that's just not right in this house. So someone that's close to me, I'm a Christian, she practices some Wiccan, or I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, but she just I talked to her. She's like, I'll do a cleansing, you do your cleansing. So I'm gonna read from the Bible. She's gonna do her ritual where we're just gonna try to tackle whatever's going on in the house. So fast forward to the night that we decide to do that. Well, she does her thing, I do my thing, and I'm reading from the Bible, and all of a sudden there's a banging on the door. The kids are screaming at this point. We have cameras all around the house. There's nothing on the cameras. There's nothing outside the door. The banging freaked us out. That was enough to put us in a spiral. We start looking into selling it because it was just I don't know, it just didn't feel right. Things were just happening too often. My son is upstairs taking a shower. Everybody is downstairs. He's the only one upstairs. Well, he starts screaming, Zoe, stop. We can hear him from upstairs screaming, tell Zoe stop. Well, everyone is confused because Zoe is sitting on the sofa. He comes downstairs and he's like, somebody was banging on the door. I know it was you, Zoe. And we're all in the living room. We're like, nobody's banging on the door. Not one person banged on the door. Not one person was upstairs. We were all sitting on the sofa as a family, and he went upstairs to shower by himself. But next thing that happened is I'm home by myself. I have my daughter with me, and she's a baby at the time. She's still 1.5. She's a toddler at this age. All of this, everything kind of amped up within this year. And then we ended up getting out of the house because it was just too much. And that freaks me out too. Okay, I need to be careful what I'm talking about. That kind of scared me. But anyways, so home by myself. My son plays the guitar. I am about to get in the shower, and I have my daughter who is sitting in her little like bouncy seat thing, and I hear from upstairs. Mind you, everyone is at school, my husband is at work. I hear the guitar strum, like I hear the guitar strum. I'm like, maybe like their dad dropped them off, because we have a his, hers, and our situation. So I was like, maybe their dad brought them home from school. And I'm like, but wait, the lock is on the door. There's no way they could have gotten in. So I go out, all the house is locked. I'm screaming like Lance and Evan. I'm calling for my kids. No one is answering me. No one is home. I go upstairs. The guitar is laying on the ground upstairs. So at this point, I'm like, okay, like this is really happening. Like these things are just like happening left and right. I'm praying. I'm like begging God to just like keep all of us safe while we're here. The people that did end up buying our house, like if they see this video, they already know, like we did tell them about this. It wasn't like, you know, we're not disclosing something. When we left the house, we let them know the things that happened. It's as far as what they wanted to believe or what happened with them afterwards, I don't know. But I will say this, the final straw for us, okay, no, let me back up. So one night I'm sitting at the computer. This is at the time I'm in college. I'm studying for my psychology classes. I'm writing a paper. I feel someone walk into like the room behind me. But when I turn around, all I see is a male figure, and then before I can blink my eyes, it's gone. And I'm like, and when I turned around, I said, I'm coming, because I thought it was my husband coming to ask me how much longer I was going to be awake. So I was going to tell him I'm coming to bed, but before I could even like blink my eyes, it was gone, but I did see it. So I was like, okay, then let me go back again. I'm really starting to freak myself out. Okay, so the final straw, the reason we sold this house was because I think we went to the zoo that day. We came home and I was outside walking the dogs, and all of a sudden I hear my daughter from inside screaming. Everybody else is inside as well. She was locked in our bedroom. Now the locks that we had, you had to turn, like it was the lock where you had to turn it in order to lock it. The door was locked from the inside. So I'm like banging, trying to get in. She is only like 1.5 years old. She was too little to actually like physically turn the lock in order to lock it, because it wasn't easy to lock that door. Okay, so you're gonna have to go to part 2, because I just have to tell you about the neighborhood and the things that happen in that neighborhood.
New Orleans is haunted. I mean, this isn't a secret, but I have received quite a few spooky and haunting stories from New Orleans. Now, if you guys know the ties between New Orleans and Haiti, this all makes sense. So it is no doubt in my mind that New Orleans voodoo is pretty powerful. People over there, they know what they're doing. They're not just witches, they're voodoo priests and priestesses. And based on how haunted the entire town is, the actual humans in New Orleans aren't alone, as there are demons and creatures walking among them looking human. I don't know if you guys have seen this video. So this man was trying to get this dude to rub elbows with him. The caption says, you meet a random man on Bourbon Street saying that he can tell you your future if you just tap his elbow. But Shadow Man taught you better than that. In the entire video, it seems like he was really pushing him to rub elbows with him. Almost like coercing him into it. Like, come on, just do it. What are you afraid of? He was not with it. One thing that did stick out to me was the fact that dude right here had to get his permission to rub elbows together.
Some of the
he couldn't
creepiest
just rub his
TikToks
elbow
aren't just
against
jump
his.
scares.
He needed
They're
his
the ones that
consent and
feel
his
too
permission
real
as
to
well.
ignore.
Now, why? What
A
is the
shadow
point of
moving
rubbing
across the
elbows?
room
Like,
when
what,
no
what
one's
would
there.
happen? Apparently, this is
child
like the
talking to
oldest trick in
someone
the
you
book
can't see.
to swap destinies
Or that
with people.
unexplained
So the
sound in
two
the middle of
joining
the night.
elbows together.
These
Apparently,
clips make
elbows
you
are known
question
to
whether
like
it's
go
just
every which
coincidence
direction. In
or
witchcraft or
something much
voodoo can
darker.
be representing of
If
life.
you're brave enough
So if
to
you
keep
see someone
watching,
and you want
hit
their
that like
lifestyle,
button.
their life,
It
and what
lets
they
me know
want, their
you want more
love,
creepy
you have to get their
content.
permission to
Don't
rub
forget to
elbows
share
with
this
you.
with a
That
friend
way,
who swears
unbeknownst
they
to the
don't
other
believe in
person,
ghosts.
they are
Let's see
actually
if they're still
swapping
confident
luck
after
and
watching
destinies
these.
with you.
And
And you
of
know, if
course,
you do it, then things in
subscribe
your
for
life will
more
just
of
start
the
going really
scariest,
bad. While
most
the other person is
unsettling
living their best
paranormal
life.
TikToks
It's the
you'll
little
ever
simple
see.
things that we don't look
Because
so
the
deep
next one
into, or the little simple
might just
things
be
that
the
we
one
don't
that keeps
believe
you up.
in. Remember, you don't have to be scared of a dog for it to bite you. So to think, oh, I don't believe in that superstitious shit, I'm just gonna go rub elbows with everybody or shake everybody's hand. You don't have to be scared of a dog for it to bite you. You don't have to be scared of something for it to affect you. And if you don't believe in it, just be safe than sorry. Don't go around rubbing elbows with people. Don't go around shaking hands with people. Anything that seems like it's sealing a deal, don't do it. Me personally, I feel like I would have got God, which is why knowledge is key. It's so important. I don't know nothing about rubbing elbows. I probably would have been like, yeah, he trying to tell me my future. Goddamn. Be safe out there, y'all. I don't know how y'all do it out in New Orleans. Anyway, like I say in every single video, I love you, my abducted humans, from your favorite Haitian homegirl.